Okay. Welcome to Eco 501 Section 2, Spring 2022, week number 2. This week, what we'll do a little follow-up of what we discussed in the previous week. And then let me share the slides. Then we can you see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
In this week, if somebody already has access to the Google Drive, you can find the PDF of this slide already, since I uploaded it after the Saturday class. Otherwise, you can check it after today's class. So what we'll do, we'll start with the texts that we will follow, how to get them. Then we'll discuss what is managerial economics and what it is not. Then we'll delve on definition of economics. After that, in part 2, we'll discuss some concepts. The 4 concepts that we'll discuss are trade-off, incentives, exchange, information sets. Distribution is within your text. That's why I'll mention it. But we won't be interested in distribution in this course. Then we discuss formal difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. Although this course is called managerial economics, it's basically applied micro. In 502, so you will confront another course which is titled macroeconomics. So what's the difference between the two? We'll discuss a little bit. Then we'll discuss why economists disagree and what type of attitude we'll take in this course. Finally, in part 3, we'll discuss the foundation of economic analysis, the markets, i.e. the competitive model, which is based on prices as a signal. Then we look at alternatives to the market mechanism, whereby resources can be allocated. And finally, we'll be discussing a little preview on what we will do the next week. So I'll start now. The texts, both of these texts, Economics by Joseph Stiglitz and Managerial Economics, Application Strategy and Tactics by McGuigan, Moyer and Harris, both of these texts are available in the Google Drive. So if you haven't checked now, you can check it later when you can. And as far as I remember, most of these textbooks are also separate chapters have also been shared as PDF. Okay. Now the approach that we'll follow, that we mentioned in last week, is that we will look at these texts, but our objective is to try to apply these the solutions or the conclusions that we draw in the context of Bangladesh. Most of us are working, so whatever we learn, we'll try to apply it in our own work experience. In the context of Bangladesh, not home country, since we don't have any foreign friends this semester. We shall adopt this approach because managerial economics has applications that spill over to other courses in your program as well. So whatever you learn here, you might find that it's useful in other courses, since it's a microeconomics course. Now the first question that we want to ask is, what is managerial economics? After the Second World War, in American business schools, this course was offered under the title of managerial economics, and 75-80 years later, there hasn't been much change. It's still offered as managerial economics, whether that's in Bangladesh or any other leading business school in the world. Basically, managerial economics started out as the application of microeconomics for managers. We mentioned this last week, that if we are not interested in entrepreneurship, we are interested in somebody is managing a business, that somebody could be the owner, that somebody could be a shareholder, that somebody could be a CEO. So how do these business managers make decisions? This is what we will be looking at throughout the whole course. How does a manager of a business, that manager may be the owner, may not be the owner, how do they make a decision under different environments they find themselves in? Now, what do we mean by different environments? if we confront a situation where government policies are extremely applicable, then we will operate in one way. If we confront a situation where government policies are not applicable, we will be operating in another way. So as the environment that we find ourselves in changes, so will our decision making also change. Initially, we'll look at what happens if price increases. How do people respond? How do funds respond? If price falls, how do funds respond? How do households respond? As the course proceeds, we'll be including other variables into the model, and then we'll see how people's decision making changes. Now, the question is, what type of tools are we going to use? We will be using tools from microeconomics. To the best of my knowledge, everybody here, apart from one or two people, has had a basic microeconomics course, right? In their undergrad?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Whether
sir.
whether that you did that as a business undergrad, or maybe an economics major or some other, or even engineering students also do economics courses. Okay, so everybody has a little bit of idea about a basic economics course. So that helps us. But at the same time, we want to extend our experience from what we had before and see the more applications of these tools. So we are looking at microeconomics because decision making was first analyzed by in economics, and that too a particular branch of economics which was known as microeconomics. That's why we will be looking at basically this course will be an applied microeconomics course. As I mentioned here, economics is the first among the social sciences to study how decisions are made. Many economic tools are based on common sense and easily applicable to building theories and models. Okay, so basically managerial economics is broadly a science of decision making. We will be looking at how a decision is made under an ideal situation. We will not be asking the question whether the decision was good or bad. Why won't we be asking this question? We mentioned that in the previous week that until we make a decision, we do not know whether that decision was good or bad. So before we make the decision, we will try to find out the best possible outcome given the information, given the environment that we're in. In order to do that, we will be relying on model building. Now, does anybody know, Mr. Mahbub Rahman, please put your camera on.
Sir, basically I am on the street.
You
Okay,
should be on the street. Okay, last week you were also on the street, to the best of my knowledge. Suraj Agarwala, Redwanul Islam, Farhana Shampa, Samia Saba, Monisha Ratri, then Khondoka Shahinul Islam, Mim. Quite a few of you aren't putting your cameras on.
Yes, sir. আমার ক্যামেরা অন আছে,
আচ্ছা,
মানে আমি মোবাইল দিয়ে অন করেছি আর কি, ল্যাপটপেরটা কাজ করে না।
না মোবাইল দিয়ে হলেও হবে. The thing is we've been asked to do this, that's why.
Sir, my camera is
My camera is not working, eto?
Sir, she's here with two accounts. So one of them has the camera and she's, I think, in audio with the other one.
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, ক্যামেরা আছে ডাবল করে, হ্যাঁ সেটাও একটা, that's also possible. Anyhow, so let's get back. Acha, we were talking
Sir,
about.
I am little bit sick. That's why I looked disaster. I couldn't turn on my camera.
Okay, try to okay, কিছু করার নাই. But anyhow, we've been asked to say these.
I will turn on camera next probably next class, from next class.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so is there anybody in this class who understands what a model is? This is what we are going to do in this course. We are going to build models.
Sir, Assalamualaikum, sir.
Alaikum salam.
Sir, Sir, actually, sir, I'm Anjumana Shilpi, sir. I have been trying to enter into the class, but last few minutes, like more than a sir, I have also sent you a mail. So last 15 minutes, I have been trying to enter. So finally, I could, but sir, I haven't started my video. Like I haven't kept my video on. So do I need to keep that video on? So I didn't know about that.
So that's the BRAC university policy at the moment.
Okay, okay, sir. So that's what I entered in also because last 15 minutes I was not.
Why were you having trouble entering?
Sir, I don't know, like, sir, actually my brother's, my brother's ID, it was entering. So when I entered, like, it was showing that I joined the class, but there was no one. So I was facing this problem. So immediately I sent you, after 5 minutes, like 6:35, immediately I sent you a mail for that reason.
During the class, anyhow, but you are here, okay? Okay,
Okay, yes.
so let's get back to what we were saying.
Yes.
Anybody in the class who can tell me what is a model? Or what do you understand by a model?
Sir, actually, I missed the lecture for the past few minutes. So can you
basically, model
tell
is
me the
a
question again?
structure.
And is there anybody in the class who can tell me what do you understand by a model?
So basically,
By
model is
model,
a
I understand.
structure.
Huh?
For one reason another is happening is showing structurally in a process that is model.
Okay, model is basically an abstraction of reality. When we take a picture of a sunset, it's a model. It's not the actual experience. But once we see the picture, we can tell that this is the picture of a sunset or a sunrise. Similarly, if we draw a bridge on a piece of paper, it's not going to be the Padma bridge, but if we draw it in such a way that somebody identifies automatically that this we're trying to draw a bridge, then that is the model of the bridge. What we are going to do is we're going to look at different phenomenon. Using models means we are going to use probably graphs. We might be using very simple equations. We might be using very simple ratios, etc. So the model building is basically an abstraction of reality through which we try to explain an environment, through which we try to explain an experience that we have. Okay. So a model is basically an abstraction of reality. It's not the reality itself, but when we present it, then we can say that, yes, this is what happens in reality. Okay. And all models are based on some kind of assumption. Why? Those assumptions explain the environment under which we are going to make a decision to reach a conclusion. After that, based on that conclusion, we might want to see whether they empirically, whether that model is good or bad. Now, we've discussed this before a little while ago. Most of us here have an economics background from our O-level, A-levels, or SSC, HSC, or undergrad. If there's anybody in this class who doesn't have an economics background, that's nothing to worry about. Most concepts of economics we will cover in this course will be based on common sense and real world experiences. Now, we've also mentioned this, that microeconomics developed theoretically first, and managerial economics, which started off as a formal course after the Second World War in American business schools, were actually applications of these microeconomics tools at the time. Over time, microeconomics has moved on, and so has managerial economics. Now, the more questions you ask and the more you participate, the more useful you'll find this course, and you might find, them useful later on. Now, what we want to do now is we want to just present a definition of economics. After that, I'll stop part one. Then we'll look at the 4 or 5 components of choice that we mentioned in the beginning. Every textbook has an economics definition. Every definition of every textbook seems to be different from each other. But basically, they have one common feature, and that is scarcity. Scarcity is something that pulls us back. That means it constrains us from making a decision. So whatever definition we give on economics, for example, in Stiglitz and Walsh, page 4, they just discussed economic studies how individuals, firms, government, and other organizations make choices and how these choices determine a society's uses of resources. So if we look at this particular definition and try to bring out the key words, what we find out is there's 4 types of institutions here. Individuals, who are the households, firms, who are the producers, government, which is a governing authority, and maybe other organizations, non-governmental organizations, private sector, etc. That means how do these institutions make a choice? Once we make a choice, how does this choice influence all of us? That means my choice is going to influence myself. At the same time, it will influence others that I interact with. Where do I interact with those people? I interact with them in the market. What is a market? We'll discuss in part 2. So to make it now even more simple, we have only 2 institutions. One is the households and one is the farms. The government and other organizations, we will, for the time being, will assume that they don't exist. How do they make choices, and what consequences does this choice have on us? So when we are discussing about choices, we are basically discussing decision making. Decision making and choice are synonymous to each other. So we've come to the end of part 1, and in part 2 we're going to look at the particular 4 components of this choice making. So before we conclude part 1, is there anybody with any question regarding this part 1?
No, sir.
So shall I pause the video here and start part 2?
Yes, sir, we can proceed.
Okay, lovely. Then I'll stop the recording here.